On this week's Vaticano, Pope Francis returns from spiritual exercises and gets right back into his public and private schedule of audiences, including this special once-a-month Jubilee audience. Also, we speak with a girl that had the chance to go to confession with the Pope. Come with us for a visit to this Roman church dedicated to the patroness of car drivers on her feast day, and take in a piece of art that brings up Lenten themes at the Vatican Museums. All this and more. Stay tuned. You're watching Vaticano. On March the 11th, Pope Francis returned after a week-long spiritual retreat outside of Rome. He expressed his gratitude to Servite priest Father Hermes Ronchi, who led the reflections. Ronchi confronted what he called the raw questions of the Bible. Questions like, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom do you seek? And Simon, son of John, do you love me?" The retreat was held in the Casa Divin Maestro, center in Aricia, Italy, roughly 16 miles outside of Rome. It's the third consecutive year in which Pope Francis wanted the curious spiritual exercises to be held outside of the Vatican, in order to foster the spiritual aspect of the retreat and recollect themselves before Easter. During his Angelus prayer, Pope Francis explained the gospel of the day that recounted the crowd wanting to stone a woman sinner. Pope Francis said that God doesn't want to identify people with their sins, but rather wants to free them from them.
Quella donna rappresenta tutti noi.
This woman represents all of us, that we are sinners, adulterers before God, and traitors of His loyalty. God does not nail us to our sin. He does not identify us with the wrongs that we have committed. We have a name, and God does not identify this name with the sin we have committed. He wants to free us, and wants that we want to be together with Him. And now, I would like to renew the gesture of giving you a pocket-sized gospel. It's the Gospel of Luke that we read on the Sundays of the liturgical year. The booklet was entitled as follows: The Gospel of the Mercy of St. Luke. They will be distributed free of charge by volunteers of the Santa Marta Pediatric Dispensary in the Vatican, along with some elderly and grandparents of Rome. How deserving are the grandfathers and grandmothers who transmit the faith to their grandchildren. I invite you to take this gospel and read it, a song every day, in order that the mercy of the Father will dwell in your heart, and you will bring it to everyone you meet. And finally, on page 123, there are the 7 corporal works of mercy and the 7 spiritual works of mercy. It would be nice if you could learn them by heart, so that it would be easier to do them.
Che li imparate a memoria, così è più facile farli.
Afterward, Archbishop Konrad Krajewski, the almoner of the Office of Papal Charities, led 1,000 elderly and grandparents in distributing 40,000 pocket-sized Gospels to the faithful. Along with the booklet, he gave everyone a specific task. As part of ongoing celebrations of the Year of Mercy, Pope Francis held a special general audience on Saturday, March the 12th. These extraordinary public audiences are being held once each month throughout the entire Jubilee year. Pope Francis focused on the topic of mercy and service, basing his reflections on the words of Jesus after he washed the feet of his disciples.
En el relato del Evangelio de San Juan que hemos escuchado,
We reflect today on the passage in the Gospel of John, when Jesus washes the feet of His disciples. In this striking act of humility, Jesus tells them, and us, to do the same for one another. He gave us a clear example of this new commandment of love. As St. John says, just as He laid down His life for us, so we ought to lay down our lives for one another. Jesus shows that this love is service, lowly, quiet and hidden, of our brothers and sisters, especially those in greatest need. By bending low to wash His disciples' feet, Jesus also invites us to acknowledge our failings, to pray for one another, and to forgive each other from the heart. He shows us that to be merciful like the Father means to follow Jesus daily along the path of humble service.
Perdonándonos de corazón y rezando los unos por los otros.
Also on that same day, Pope Francis received participants of a formation course held by the Roman Rota. The course for canon lawyers focused on the new juridical process for the verification of marital nullity. In his remarks, Pope Francis focused on the importance of the recent modifications to the Church's process for the declaration of nullities. He said the resulting shorter process has an important pastoral focus aimed at easing the conscience of many people worried about the validity of their marriages. This young theology student from Switzerland, who wanted to explore his faith more profoundly, is the subject of a new documentary.
And
when Pope Francis was elected, I was very fascinated, and this helped me to decide to serve the Pope by joining the Swiss Guard.
With only 115 soldiers, the Pontifical Swiss Guard is, and this is also the title of the documentary, the smallest army in the world. The film was recently screened here at the United Nations in Geneva. It provides a glimpse into the human reality of the Swiss Guard.
They relax, they go out and have their pizza and enjoy human relationships among each other. And they have a great camaraderie because of that. They work and live together as a family, and they're very proud of the work that they do.
The alliance between Switzerland, the Holy See, and the service to the papacy by the Swiss Guard has a history of over 500 years. Does serving in the Papal Guard have an impact on the faith of the Swiss Guard members?
Yes, it made me grow more mature in my faith. Also to see pilgrims from around the world who make enormous sacrifices to be able to come to Rome leaves a mark on you. And the fact that we are living in the chapel of Saints Martin and Sebastian of the Swiss is inspiring too and helps to deepen our faith.
Swiss Guard members are impressed by the closeness of Pope Francis to his Swiss Guard.
He recognizes our faces, he approaches us directly, speaks with us. "Oh, didn't I see you a while ago over there?" To encounter Pope Francis is always fascinating. His closeness to the Swiss Guard, he appreciates these young people that surround him very much.
The director of the documentary received the Italian Silver Ribbon Film Award this year. He said that he wanted to convey a humanitarian message to believers and non-believers, a message that life is the art of encounter.
In his general audience, Pope Francis emphasized the hope of the message of the prophet Jeremiah to the people of Israel.
The
prophet Jeremiah addresses the Israelites who had been deported and announces them the return to their land. This return to the homeland is a sign of the infinite love of God, who does not abandon his children, but cares for them and saves them. The exile was a very hard experience for the people of Israel and challenged their faith. We too can live sometimes some kind of exile, such as loneliness, suffering, death, which makes us think that we are abandoned by God. We can ask, where is God? The prophet Jeremiah gives us an answer. God is close to us. He is faithful and does great works of salvation for those who hope in him.
En aquellos que esperan en él.
The Pontifical Academy for Life focused its yearly meetings this year on bioethics. Just miles from the Vatican, where they were meeting, Regina Apostolorum University is forming graduate students in this very field.
This two-year course is pretty complete. We start from the beginning of life, all the issues, abortion, conception, sterilization, procreation, and then to the end of life, which is euthanasia, assisted suicide, brain death. You also go deeper into these issues, look at the philosophical aspect, the ethics, the science, the law, the sociology. So it's kind of like looking at it very holistically and globally. Most of our students who come for this degree program they tend to be mature students, professionals, who have basically done nursing or medical doctors or journalists or lawyers who find that in their work they come up with these different important issues and they need to address them in their work, and they find that this kind of formation will help them in their work.
These students, who come from all over the world, told us why they chose to specialize in bioethics.
And I actually teach a bioethics course to high school students, and as you can imagine, they have the best questions, the hardest questions, and these are questions that they're going to be dealing with in the future, whether as parents or physicians themselves, and so it's important for them to be able to think about them before they have to face them in real time.
I actually took a very interesting women's studies class that really caused me to question, like, what does it even mean to be a woman and what is truth itself? And there were so many options for an answer that I was like, this is why the world is crazy. Like, no one can agree on what the answer is. So because of, honestly, providence, but the Lord exposed me through different people and different gifts in my life, just the reality of John Paul II's writings, the nature of human dignity, the nature of the human person, and especially that in and through the gift of my own femininity, there's a call to bear life to the world. And I realized that that has both a spiritual and a physical component. So I just delved kind of through the scientific realm and then encountered philosophy and theology. And I would say easiest is that I've always felt called to be a bridge between the two worlds.
Father Rick Marpa, on the other hand, says the situation in his home country, the Philippines, brought him here.
We have this, the government is trying to control our population in the belief that it will improve our economy. So the legislation right now is promoting artificial birth control, which is directly against our church teachings and our moral teachings in particular. So we're trying to defend what the church teaches since time immemorial, that life is inviolable, especially those life that are in the weakest, right? The unborn and the handicapped and the old.
Many are taking a lead from Pope Francis, promoting a culture of life in words and gestures.
The Pope talks about the culture of waste, or the throwaway culture. So I think here he's trying to demonstrate that every individual person, whether they are healthy or not, actually those who are even more vulnerable should be the ones that should be specially attended to because of their vulnerability, of their disease, of their disability. So I think he's trying to demonstrate that to us. So they should not be eliminated just because they appear to be useless for a consumeristic society that we live in. So he's trying to make that point, I think, very strong.
All over the globe, universities are starting to include this field of study, realizing its importance for the discussion with contemporary society. On Friday, March the 4th, the Lenten call to conversion was being encouraged worldwide, and an event called 24 Hours for the Lord was celebrated in the Papal Basilica of St. Peter and worldwide as people joined Pope Francis, doing the same in their home parishes. The initiative, now in its third year, laid emphasis once again on the importance of prayer, Eucharistic adoration, and confession.
Oggi più che mai, soprattutto noi pastori,
today more than ever, we pastors are especially called to hear the cry, perhaps hidden, of all those who wish to encounter the Lord. We need to re-examine those behaviors of ours, which at times do not help others to draw close to Jesus. The schedules and programs which do not meet the real needs of those who may approach the confessional. Human regulations, if they are more important than the desire for forgiveness, our own flexibility, which may keep others away from God's tenderness.
For some of the faithful, a dream came true. They could go to confession with the Pope.
I had the pleasure and blessing of going to confession to the Holy Father. So it was the most private audience you could ever have with the Pope because no one would interrupt us. It was just the one-on-one to be able to really receive the mercy of God in that moment. He gave general advice, which was, always good. I can apply it to all parts of my life. But he said, when discerning the will of God, it's really easy. And I'm like, oh, good, it's easy. It's really easy. You just have to ask and pray, and he'll let you know. So ask and pray to the Lord every step of the way, and he'll let you know as it comes. And knowing the will of God is that simple. So that's good.
Pope Francis went to confession himself, guiding the world's attention to the sometimes forgotten sacrament.
I think it's definitely a time where he's encouraging people to go to confession, and that was one of the main points of my experience that was so beautiful. The confession was beautifully normal. It really put into perspective that I'm meeting Christ in the confessional. It could be a first-year priest, it could be a priest of 50 years, it could be the Holy Father, but I'm actually meeting Christ. And with how much encouragement he's given to priests to be merciful in the confessional, and encouraging people to experience the sacrament, I really hope it does encourage people, because it doesn't matter who's there as the intermediary. It's Christ that's forgiving you of your sins, and that's always going to be a beautiful experience.
The intention of this event was to draw people around the world to the mercy of God, the goal of this year's Jubilee. The Argentinian servant of God, Cardinal Eduardo Francisco Peronio, is now on the path to possible sainthood. This was the scene on March the 11th as his official cause passed from the diocesan phase to the Vatican, where the investigation will continue. The man now promoting his canonization cause knew him personally. He says Peronio didn't even let a battle with cancer disturb his evangelizing spirit.
He didn't show to have had the sickness. I knew him when he was still the prefect for the Congregation of Religious and Laity. He was already sick, but he did not tell anybody that he was sick. As Cardinal Vallini said, and that was also my experience, when Peronio spoke with a person, he did not care for anything else in the world. No other thought crossed his mind. When he spoke to you, you were the most important thing in his life, and you had his complete concentration.
The youngest of 22 children of an Italian immigrant family in Argentina, he was ordained a priest and a bishop there in his homeland. In 1976, though, Blessed Pope Paul VI called him to Rome to work in the Curia. He lived there ever after. In fact, it was the Diocese of Rome that took on his canonization cause as one of its own in 2006.
The figure of Cardinal Peronio is a good for Rome, a good for the Church, a good for Argentina most especially, since it was his home. There he lived, there he served the Church, there he was a shepherd. Argentina can see her son greatly honored and can be inspired by his great examples. Rome also, since he lived here, can take his witness and be inspired by the good he has done.
He's well known in Rome for having developed the original idea for World Youth Day. It was an initiative St. John Paul II readily put in practice in the world, but first in Peronio's native Argentina, where he's still revered.
In the Year of Mercy, this really is a gift from God to the bishops of Argentina. We're living this moment so intensely. I'm taking the news of all this to my brothers, especially because we recognize in him a great pastor. And I always say that the Cardinal was deeply human, and his whole self filled with God, and it's from there that there arose an abundant wealth of his life and his faithfulness to the Lord in the gospel. He served the Lord with all his love and everyone he met along the way. Nobody approached the Cardinal without feeling deeply loved and without taking something away, something from God.
His cause now needs an approved miracle to advance, and there's already one under investigation. A 15-month-old baby from Argentina recovered from poisoning in 2008 thanks to prayers for Peronio's intercession. If officially declared a miracle, the Cardinal would be beatified, and with the second miracle, he could be officially recognized as Saint Peronio. Here, close to Rome's famous Colosseum, one of the city's monumental saints is remembered and revered. Inside the basilica that carries her name is the burial place of the 15th century St. Francis of Rome, still dearly beloved today by Romans for her great charity.
St. Francis of Rome is the co-patron of Rome, and she therefore enjoys a certain devotion of the Romans. and also pilgrims who come into the Basilica on the 9th of March, the day dedicated to the saint. From the morning on, there are masses, and then in the afternoon you have Vespers. St. Francis of Rome is a much beloved saint of the Romans because she, in the 1400s, was somebody like today's Mother Teresa of Calcutta, a saint of the poor and of the needy. She came from a rich and noble family, but did not hesitate to go to the hospitals of her time and cure the sick. And she was not just attentive to the needs of the body with its sickness, but also those of the spirit. She united both things, the cure of the body and the cure of the soul. St. Francis of Rome is considered the saint of mercy. She's buried here since 1440. That was the year of her funeral.
A hallmark of great saints is that devotion to them withstands the tests of time. Though she died more than 570 years ago, she's far from forgotten. Still today, locals name daughters Francesca Romana, after this Roman wife, mother, and eventual religious sister. Also, if you have a driver's license, she's a saint to remember.
Since St. Francis of Rome had the grace to be always accompanied by her guardian angel, and she was able to see him in her nocturnal walks in the city, which were very dangerous in those times. Her angel protected her from evil, and Pius XI proclaimed her the patron of all drivers. So even today, there is the tradition of the blessing of cars.
Late in life, when St. Francis was widowed, she joined friends in founding a convent of Benedictine Oblate missionaries. Incredibly, it still exists today, just a mile from the Basilica, and it's alive and well as a working convent. You can still visit just one day every year, on the saint's feast day of March the 9th, and people line up to see the frescoes that remember the terrible afflictions she faced and the gospel-driven work she carried out. A Roman saint that continues to inspire in death as she did in life.
We're here in the first room of the Vatican Pinacoteca painting gallery, which focuses on the 1300s, the very beginning of the Renaissance, where we're passing from the Byzantine icon tradition towards the full flowering of the Renaissance. We have a beautiful example behind me of the life of St. John the Baptist, a painting on wood, oil, by Giovanni Boronini. Now Giovanni focuses on a beautiful thing, which is that ascent into the top of the mountain and into the desert that all of us are about during Lent. And it starts with one thing very interesting. First, he's accompanied by the angel. It's the angel sent by the Lord to send him into the desert. Has him gently by the shoulder and indicating the path upwards. Go out into the desert, just like Jesus and just like all of us are about to do in Lent. And then he makes that ascent up the mountain like Moses, like Jesus for the Transfiguration, like all of us, climbing, making effort, like Abraham bringing Isaac. It's a tradition, climbing, going up higher, seeing things better, also leaving things behind. That detachment is necessary in Lent, necessary to free our souls and also to go up and encounter God. And the second thing that I want to focus on, which is very beautiful, taken from the Byzantine tradition, that gold background, that sense of eternity, that the mystery focused on in this painting and in our own hearts is focusing on eternal values, things that last forever, not ephemeral, temporal, historical, but go much further beyond. And that's what we're focused on in Lent as well, to grasp those things that last. So we leave behind material things, we make acts of charity, we detach ourselves. And that's the beautiful path of ascent and spiritual growth. And finally, just a few details that are quite curious or interesting. St. John the Baptist is dressed like a Franciscan. This painting is just about 60 years after the founding of the Franciscans. So he is the new apostle, the new example of the gospel, the new example of poverty, of detachment, what we're trying to achieve by going into the desert. And finally, it's interesting is that San Giovannino is shown as a little boy. We need to be simple to achieve this process. We need to be detached like little children, very simple, and entrusting our Heavenly Father, follow that path into the desert. So have a beautiful Lent, and may God bless you.